G'day everyone. It was 9:30 for a 9:30 start, but we'll kick off. We've got a few more people coming in. We have our guest speaker on board now, which is terrific. I'd like to start off, as we always do, with an acknowledgement that today we're meeting on Larrakia land, and it's our great privilege to all be here today, and we pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. Thanks for everyone for taking the time today. For some of the new faces in town, cruise ships are a really exciting time of the year here in the top end, in particular in Darwin. And there's nothing more gratifying as a tourism guy to see the streets come alive when they've been pretty quiet for what is sometimes a pretty quiet low season, or what we all know is our wet season. So having cruise ships at this time of year is really key. Today we're going to focus more about that which haven't graced our shores for the last couple of years through the age of COVIDity, and that is the larger ships. The ships that are booked currently aren't at the numbers what they were in 2019 when we were starting to get up there, but we can certainly see the beginnings of that. So if we look at our forward charts, and the girls will go through a little bit that today, our forward bookings, thanks to the wonderful team at Port Darwin who share that online, and Carlene's here today. G'day, Carlene. We've got about 10 ships that are above 1,000 packs between October and March on the books coming in, and they hold about a capacity of about 25,000 people amongst them. Then we've got another 10 ships that are booked between October and March that are between 500 and 1,000 passengers. And then they're sitting at about 13,500 passengers that they're carrying collectively. Capacity. We don't know the booked people yet. But what we do know is that cruise is coming back with a vengeance. And a cruiser, as aside from someone who's a self-driver or a drop and flop by the beach customer, people who love cruise aren't walking away from cruising despite what's happened in the last couple of years. They've also taken great solace in the work that cruise ships have done to make them a safer and more enjoyable form of travel. And we've seen that. I think a lot of you would have seen a lot of the activity that was going on around when it was a question of getting small expedition ships back into town mid last year. And we certainly got some insights into the amount of work that they had done to make their ships more than just compliant with local health regulations, but to make it a safe journey for everyone. And the extra work they'd gone into the physical of the ship in terms of air filters and everything else, but also having on board various activities pre-getting on board and whilst on board, and having a doctor and or a nurse on board as well. Now, today we're not going to talk much about small expedition cruising. Now, small expedition cruising is those gorgeous little white vessels and blue vessels that we see sneak into the harbour and spend a couple of days and head out. Coral Expeditions, Ponham, APT. They predominantly are here through April to September, and we'll be doing a lot more work in the new year with our partners at Tourism NT and City of Darwin, and also with Darwin Port around how we can be better connecting those passengers, because those passengers are the ones we really love, because we know that they're coming into town 3 to 4 days prior. They're spending $2,000 a night on a 10-day cruise between here and Broome or here in Cairns. And we know that they're coming for the full top-end Northern Australia experience. So there's a real opportunity there, and we as an industry can work out ways to do it better than we did before and continue to grow that. In fact, just on that, and great to see Councillor Paul Arnold here today. We're talking about small expedition ships. In fact, it was my second day in the job a few years ago now. And I bumped into Paul, and there was a small expedition ship in town, and he said to me, he said, there's a lot of value in these small ones. I know we put a lot of focus on the bigger ships coming in. We get really excited about this 2,000 and 3,500, and there's ministerial photos, photographs taken, and they're handing over the plaque. But at these little ships that come in and out, that have the real value, that often goes unnoticed. And he said, just 2 days ago, had this guy come in, walked in, had a bit of a look around the gallery, had a bit of a chat. Where are you from? He's from the States. He'd flown in. This Northern Australia was part of his big Australian holiday. Paul had a bit of a chat, and he says, yeah, all right. I said, I might be back. So he went out, comes back in 15 minutes later, holding a cup of coffee. And he says, Paul, he says, I'm going to have that one. And dang, if this isn't the most expensive coffee I've ever bought in my life. It's just cost me $3,500. So the bloke had literally left his hotel looking for a place of coffee, bumped into Paul Arnold Gallery, had a bit of a look around, had a way and go, there's no way I can leave Darwin without buying that. Yeah, and that's the kind of example of the pickups that cruise passengers offer at the extreme. But outside of that, especially through the dry and going back to the bigger cruise ship opportunities here, that's the business when we don't have an airport that's flourishingly busy. They're the kind of customers that are really fabulous to have in a place where we don't yet have the marketing campaign for the top end that creates an all year round destination for us. For everyone here that has fixed shops, retail businesses, accommodation, you can't just pack it up. The bank manager won't let that happen. You want to stay open. Cruise ships is our real opportunity because that's the season. And we can always improve what we're doing for cruise. One thing that did come out was in the surveys at Tourism NT, because Tourism NT, and just if I might just take a moment to talk about roles and responsibilities, we're really grateful to the team at Tourism NT, and Russell Smith's here from Tourism NT. Thanks for coming along today, Russell. And if you haven't met Russell, I believe is taking on the portfolio of cruise. Is that correct? Correct, excellent. And so get to know this fella, and here's why. There's two key aspects that we rely upon Tourism NT. One is in partnership with Darwin Port, attracting the ships. So there is a worldwide struggle because 95% of the cruise ships globally have been reactivated. But they aren't all booked to come back into Darwin, and that's going to take some time. And there are some hurdles with border force for people coming in from Singapore and Indonesia, but we'll leave that aside. It's fixed.
I literally just got an email saying that they've lifted immediately the ADF restrictions.
Oh, terrific. So that means they can board in Singapore?
So yeah, so international ships can now come in Melbourne with onboarding.
See, that's what happens when you come to a TT event, you hear it live. That's gorgeous news. So here was the challenge, ladies and gentlemen. Border Force were saying we're not going to put on a big ship coming in from Singapore or from Bali, being the first port of entry, they've got to clear immigration. And Border Force were saying we're not going to put someone on that ship. We're going to do it. And Carleen, at Darwin Port, you have to clean that out because we're going to make that an immigration hawk. How long does it take to clear 3,500 people through immigration to spend, what, 2,500 Darwin before you get to go back on the ship, if you're the last one off the ship? So this is terrific news. So, wow, that's gorgeous. Really, really thrilled to hear that. Thank you, Carleen. Any other news? And for our accommodation folk here today as well, cruise ships, one of the big opportunities that we've seen over the last few years before 2019 was those overnighters. And yes, while there is a lot, and I'll put restaurants in this category as well, and pubs, whilst a lot of people have paid for that meal on board and paid for that bed on board, a lot of them will take the opportunity that they're in Darwin, the top end, and they'll get off for the night, stay somewhere else, definitely go out and have a meal. Not everyone, but there are always those opportunities. And we certainly see that with people going a little bit further abroad, not just staying in the city as well. So our key, and what I was, is to really focus on how we can be distinctively top end, distinctively Darwin. And we're working really closely with the City of Darwin and Activate Darwin around this shore logistics and how we can do that better for people who get off the ship. For people looking to connect with bookings on board, and our guest speakers today will talk about that, Tourism NT have some great connections and resources through Russell to connect with the onshore excursion companies. And that's for everyone who's on a cruise ship. And if you've done one, you'll think about, this cruise goes to Darwin. When you buy it at Flight Centre in Melbourne, or name a travel agent somewhere in the world, they'll try and sell you the onshore experiences for every port that they can. And if you don't buy there, on the ship, they'll be desperate to sell you a tour or a walking tour or some sort of activities before you get off the ship. And now that needs to be contracted through what are shore excursion companies or inbound tour operators. And they're companies like, you'll hear names like ShoreX, Abercrombie and Kent, Bob Wood, South Pacific. These are companies that have long-term contracts And that's a great role that Tourism NT is playing, and we're certainly keen to support all that we can if you want to be one of those companies being sold on board before they arrive. Today, from a visitor information centre, the team are going to focus more, after our guest speaker, around the once they've already arrived, opportunities and the kind of things that the team are putting together. Some of it's still in planning, some of it well planned and ready to be delivered. One thing we do know is that cruise in Darwin, survey says, and cruise ships live by these surveys. Survey says 94% satisfaction rate for Darwin. From a cruise ship, if that number starts dropping below the 80s, you start questioning why you're taking people there, because they're not going to get on your cruise ship if you're going to a place that's not getting the customer satisfaction rating. So some of us might think, wow, that's pretty high. I think we can be higher. And I think we all know that we can benefit more from the economic value of cruise ships arriving, because there's not much value in 3,500 people getting off and just trudging their way around the city, soaking up all the free Wi-Fi, updating their status to their grandkids, maybe having a cup of coffee, and then getting back on. The real value in having these cruise ships here is that they spend money. The real value is that when we are bereft of any other interstate or international visitors during the wet season, that we can have those customers and we can keep our staff employed, we can keep our bank manager at bay. That's the real opportunity, and how we can better create a better experience that enables people to part with their cash and have a great time and go back and say, you know what, I'm scoring Darwin 100. I'm scoring the top end 100. That was an awesome day. And I'm so grateful that I took this 10-day, 15-day cruise, because it stopped a day or hopefully two in Darwin. Today, we are delighted to bring to you someone who's got quite a bit of knowledge in destination organisation for cruise ships. Now, we can navel gaze all we want at ourselves, and I think through our interactions with our members and the feedback we've got and the conversations and then the internals of what we think we can do better as an organisation on your behalf with our partners of City of Darwin and Tourism NT and Activate Darwin. It's also important to have a look at those places that are doing it well. In 2019, I think we got 49 ships in, larger ships. It was a pretty good year. Hobart got 194. And they're really hitting it out of the park. And outside of Sydney, on the global stage, Hobart are batting, and southern Tasmania are batting way above their average. And they do it really well. They have a really well coordinated, connected tourism sector, retail, hospitality, all within the visitor economy. They work well with the local council, local government, and they work well with the cruise companies. Things that were happening that working together with the port, with Tasmania that I'm aware of through my readings and conversations with the folk at Tourism NT. And for those of you who might remember our Qantas manager from many years ago, a bloke called Stephen Farquhar, just literally had breakfast with him up at the Hilton. He's up here for an aviation conference. He's the Director of Aviation and Cruising for Tourism Tasmania. So he's up here for a conference a couple of days. But he was telling me what they worked really hard with industry is on those days of, it's no sense having 3 massive cruise ships sitting in at the port of Hobart, because it's just too congested and it's just not a good experience. And the shopkeepers, the tour operators, the retailers just can't keep up with it. The hospitality can't keep up with it. So they're really working together to identify, well, 2 days later, we've got a gap. Any chance that ship could come there and we could work better on that planning. Now, we're not at that stage yet, but it would be nice to get that one day, and we will get there, won't we, Carly? Today, we're going to hear from a fella who has helped put Hobart on that stage. He's been in tourism for about 34 years. So him and I've got same in common there. Travelled the world as a scuba diving instructor with a notable 10 years in the Red Sea in Egypt. Then owned his own scuba diving company with 9 operations across 4 countries, being Greece, Turkey, France and Italy. And after selling his business, our guest speaker today moved with his Tasmanian wife and his family to Tasmania. He worked at the City of Hobart, running the Tasmanian Travel and Information Centre for some time, and then he moved to head up the regional tourism organisation known as Destination Southern Tasmania, just over 4 years ago. Our guest today is Alex Heroys. His mantra in life is that he still thinks of himself as a stupid 18-year-old just having a good old crack. On a business level, his greatest passion is helping businesses succeed. As a previous small business owner, Alex understands the stresses, the pain points, and the passion business folk have for their work and for their people. And if we can help alleviate some of that small business pressure, then that's got to be a good day. Today, Alex is going to walk us through some of the key cruise topics, including the importance of the welcome, managing a volunteer army, which the ladies will be able to give you a bit more information about what's planned after Alex speaks, engaging and working with shore excursion companies, and there is a fair bit to consider with that, and it's not a straight up, give me a customer as I'm ready. There is a process, and again, with Tourism Top End and the good folk at Tourism NT, we're certainly here to help you should you want to be part of that business with cruise ships. Understanding different cruise ships. In the same way that we understand the difference between hotel brands, 3-star and 5-star, the same is to be said for cruise ships. Some of them have a lot of passengers who don't spend. Some of them have not many passengers on board who spend a lot. Some of them have all-inclusive on board, some of them don't. So just understanding the different cruise ships so you can certainly calibrate your thinking and how you're thinking, what you want to do about that. Today's also a bit of a momentous day that the northernmost regional tourism organisation is partnering with the southernmost tourism organisation in Australia, in destination southern Australia, Tasmania. And I'm going to say I'm pretty thrilled to have someone who's very focused on making his destination better, to be able to take the time and spend some time with us to talk about, give us some insights as to what they're doing to make Hobart and southern Tasmania a better destination for cruise and sharing some of their learnings. So we're really grateful today. So Alex Heroys is online. Alex? G'day, mate. How are you?
I'm fine, Glenn. What a wonderful introduction. Made me blush. I wish my mum was in the room. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you very well. You can hear us, no doubt.
I can.
We have the good folk here of Darwin and Greater Darwin, part of the Top End, here sitting literally on the edge of their seat, waiting to hear about all the
Thank you so much. And as you said in the intro, Glenn, I still think of myself as that kind of spotty 18-year-old. So when I'm asked to present things like this, I do suffer all the time from imposter syndrome, but I'll give it my best crack, and I hope I can show you some value and offer you some insights into what we're doing.
Thanks, Alex. I'll hand it over to you, and what we might do, if there is any questions at the end, we might just throw to that, and if not, we can take it on notice and follow up at another time. But over to you, Alex. Thanks, mate.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate very much the opportunity. So let's just see if I can advance my screen. Bit of technical stuff going on there. Hold on. Yes, okay, good. It's working. So thank you. I'm sure it's slightly more than -3 degrees up there today. That was what I woke up to this morning with my little boy, crunching through the frost outside. He loved that. So it's an honour to be with you today, and I thank you very much for the opportunity. Following on from Glenn's acknowledgement of country, I thought it's appropriate, as we are meeting in Lutruwita here, myself in Tasmania, that we read out a statement that we came to agreement with between the government, Tasmanian tourism industry, and the local Aboriginal community. So I'll just read this out for you, if you'll indulge me. The Tasmanian tourism industry acknowledges the Tasmanian Aboriginal people and their enduring custodianship of Lutruwita, Tasmania. We honour 40,000 years of uninterrupted care, protection and belonging to these islands before the invasion and colonisation of European settlement. As a tourism industry that welcomes visitors to these lands, we acknowledge our responsibility to represent to our visitors Tasmania's deep and complex history, fully, respectfully and truthfully. We acknowledge the Aboriginal people who continue to care for this country today. We pay our respects to their elders past and present. We honour their stories, songs, art and culture, and their aspirations for the future of their people and these lands. And we respectfully ask that tourism be part of that future. So Destination Southern Tasmania, first of all, is a regional tourism organisation. And as Glenn said, my previous experience directly was with the Tasmanian Travel and Information Centre, the Hobart Visitor Information Centre. So my connection is really directly to industry on the ground. As you guys are, we work very collaboratively together with our state tourism organisation, Tourism Tasmania, as well as our port authority, TasPorts, and as well as the local government, City of Hobart Council, to deliver the cruise ship season down here. And it's been a work in progress, I suppose, for at least 20, even 25 years now. The cruise ships have been coming into Tassie. But I'll try to offer you a bit of value here. So what we do really is threefold: marketing, advocacy, and industry development. And industry development is really where the cruise section sits, I suppose. And what if we haven't really been paying attention for the last 2 years about market diversification? I think that's we really haven't been paying attention. So the cruise ship market for us, as it is for a lot of destinations, has a lot of strong opinions about it. There are people that love it, there are people that hate it. Our focus is on ensuring that we do two things, really. One, that we make the cruise ship market work for us as a destination. We make it work for the industry operators who have spent 20 years gearing themselves up to point their product at this market so that they can economically yield against it. But also make sure that we offer the visitors to Tasmania, or to Hobart in my region, and Port Arthur, the best experience possible, because what we are aiming to do is then convert those passengers to longer term propositions, so they will return. And we've picked up some statistics in Tasmania that there is a good solid percentage of returning cruise ship passengers into the state, and we don't really understand this fully, but when they return, they tend to spend about 20% more than the average leisure visitor. We haven't really dug into that yet beforehand. But I thought I'd start with a bit of a global overview that Glenn touched on before as well. And in this aspect, we work very closely with the Australian Cruise Association. And if you haven't contacted them or got involved with them, I'd certainly recommend that. We're very lucky to have Jill Abel, their CEO, live in Hobart in Tasmania. And the Australian Cruise Association really helps us connect with those cruise lines, because for such a large global industry, the numbers are quite incredible about the size and scale of the industry. But the reality is that it's actually a very small amount of people that you have to connect to really get to the decision makers. And this is where we found that we've been able to deliver real value, is by connecting directly and building those relationships over time so that we can adjust and work out what works well for our own destination. And it was touched on earlier about the 3 ships in Hobart. That was a decision that was as much for the community as it was for the industry. The reality is we probably could have handled 3 ships in Hobart, but it wasn't a great experience around the waterfront. There were just too many people. So that in agreement with the cruise lines, that's now a standard thing. Although technically, we've got a bit of a bump this year. We've got 3 ships in town on New Year's Eve, but that's a quirk of the calendar. But the reality is all 3 of those ships are smaller sort of expedition style ships and don't add up to more than 1,000 people across the whole port. Let's have a quick look about what's happening around the world. Since the restart in July 2020, we've had about 18 million passengers who've already sailed. 100 plus countries are open, and the majority of the ocean-going capacity is expected to be operational by mid-2022. And these are slides that I've taken from a presentation that was given by Jill Abel from the Australian Cruise Association, as well as Joel Katz from Cruise Lines International Association. And when we look at the kind of consumer sentiment, what is being told to the cruise lines is that the majority of cruisers that enjoyed cruising will be cruising again. And that's above sort of pre-pandemic levels. But it's also interesting to see that there is a trend of new cruisers. So this is domestic market, people that are new to cruising, and we'll delve a little bit into what that means moving forward. It's still an emerging market, but that emerging market is looking for slightly different product as well, which is quite interesting. Things like jet ski tours, more adventure tours. The recovery is forecast to return to 2019 levels by around about 2023, but could exceed that as well. So the Australian overview, as I'm sure you all know, and I may be telling you things that you have already heard, so I do apologise if that's the case. But the biosecurity was lifted on the 17th of April, and now allowing passenger ships over 100 to return. And that slowly increased coming into Sydney and Brisbane initially. And it's good to hear you've got your first ones in October, the same as us, which is frighteningly close at the moment. The forward bookings are exceeding all expectations. And it's interesting to note that they're not limited to those that already had credit with the cruise line. There would have been a lot of people that would have held on to bookings past them. As we said, travellers new to cruise are booking in high numbers, and that's reflected in the confidence they have in the safety protocols on board. And Glenn touched a little bit earlier on the capacity of the cruise lines. So we've got bookings of ships coming in with X amount of seats on board, but we don't necessarily know what the capacity is going to be. What we do know, though, is that the capacity will be slightly reduced from previous times, and that's a lot to do with their safety protocols as well. They're holding space on the boat in case they need it for any sort of medical or safety reason. So the figures I've heard are around about potentially 80% of capacity is where you'd be looking to aim it at if it was full. So the shore excursions we'll dig into a little bit later on, but what's quite interesting in that trend is that previously around about 30%, between 30 to 40% of passengers would be booking a shore excursion via the ship, which is a reasonably low number. And then there would be a spread of passengers either booking, sorting out their own bookings directly beforehand, or just stepping off into the port and trying to find something to do. Now that figure is rising globally to around about 50% of people booking shore excursion tours with the cruise lines direct. So that gives us an opportunity as an industry to work closer with the shore excursion companies to make sure your products are on board the ship. And the reasoning behind that is pretty self-explanatory when you think about it. It was one of the determining reasons why people are booking cruise ships at the moment is safety, you could say, ironically. But it's viewed as being a particular safe environment. So when you're in that environment, you've signed up for that cruise, you're sitting at the restaurant with the friends that you've made during the cruise line, there's more impetus now for you to then continue that relationship with the cruise line when you step off onto the shore. So buying those shore excursions through the cruise lines is starting to increase in percentage. So that gives us, again, as I said, the opportunity to get product on there. I suppose the key messages that were given out by the ACA and clear were to remain flexible and adaptable, understand the importance of vaccination for your workplaces, and it's worth noting that they have 100% policy for vaccination for crew members on cruise lines and around about 95% for passengers. And the reason that can't be 100% is because to take into consideration extremely young children and those that may have a medical exemption. Communicate with the various ground handlers on ship-specific protocols and continue to reimagining the shore side of product on offer. And that's the bit that we'll dig into a little bit later, is about what product we can offer. But I was asked to talk about the importance of the welcome. And I wanted to talk about a volunteer army, and I'm not 100% sure, and hopefully I can still hear you, but do you currently have a volunteer group welcoming cruise passengers?
Alex, we are rebuilding our ambassador army.
Fantastic, that's great. So we're quite a long way down that track here, nod to there was a lady called Dorothy who started a volunteer from, as these things do, started originally in a tennis group. So there were a group of ladies that played tennis, and Dorothy liked to go cruising, and she started her own volunteer army probably about 23 years ago. Now she ran that fiercely passionate group of volunteers by herself for a long time, with a little bit of support here and there. And then as Dorothy aged, she passed that mantle on to the City of Hobart, and which was then run directly in my time through the Hobart Visitor Information Centre. So Hobart scores extremely highly with the cruise lines, if not, can't remember the exact stats, but I think we may be number one in Australia for the welcome of passengers and for their general feedback about the destination. And so much of that is delivered directly by the volunteers inside the cruise terminal. So how do we manage that volunteer army? At the moment, it's run around about 100 volunteers. And during COVID, because it was run by the council now, the volunteers were sort of taken and used in other areas. We've got a particularly large market here on a Saturday called the Salamanca Market. And during COVID, with the restrictions that were in place, obviously everybody had to check in using a check-in app. There was a capacity limit at the market of 5,000 when it was reopened. And the volunteers were used as what we call safety angels during that time. So the point there is that luckily this group was kept together and is still available to be used for this welcome. So what do they do? The most important part of this is really a friendly welcome. It's not much more difficult than that. The secondary part of that is around giving local advice. So there is a connection with the Visitor Information Centre to educate the volunteers in local product and local opportunities and local knowledge for them to disperse to the cruise ship passengers. But they always put in a bit of their own spin on that, as you will find with volunteer armies, and I'm sure you've worked with volunteers before. You can certainly invite the volunteers to join you. It's quite tricky to control the volunteers, but they all come with it with a great heart, and there's such an important part of the whole logistical operation there. One of the I suppose challenges in Hobart is that Hobart is viewed as by the cruise lines as what they call a CBD port. So the ship enters directly into the heart of the city, which means there's no buses moving anybody around. Cruise ship passengers come out of the port, and then they're pretty much in the city and they can walk. But the Visitor Information Centre, which is where the majority of the bookings on the day are made, is around about 500 metres away from the cruise terminal. So one of the jobs of the volunteers is to help those passengers understand where they are and work in the wayfinding. So warm welcome, local advice, driving people to the Visitor Information Centre, and also recommending what tours are on and what time they're going and where they can buy those products. An important part of that sort of volunteer army as well is a FAMIL program. So when running that volunteer program, it's important that the volunteers understand fully the product on the ground. So every year, about 2, potentially 3 times a year, the volunteers are taken on a bit of a day out on a FAMIL program to the relevant products so that they can experience it themselves. And also the majority of the products that understand this relationship also offer them the opportunity to freely visit and use their product so they can understand it and then talk about it. And I used an example before. We'll touch on a bit of a welcome map that used to be that is still delivered to cruise ship passengers. And we took the volunteers on a FAMIL day out, and one of the FAMILs was a particular cafe, and they just signed up to have a bit of an advert on this map. So we took the volunteers to have a look at the cafe and to see what was unique about it and what they could recommend. And one volunteer in particular fell in love with this cafe, and every day that that volunteer was on, the cafe used to have over 150 people through its doors, and every day that volunteer was not on, they didn't used to have that same amount of visitation. So it's kind of, there's a bit of a poison chalice there, because the cafe needs to staff up to welcome the passengers, but if that particular volunteer isn't working that day, so they can get very passionate about certain things. So it's important to manage that flow of information, and that was done through daily briefings and also printed material, which we'll touch on in a second. There's a little image here you can see of the information desk inside the cruise terminal. The Visitor Information Centre also runs some advertising opportunities with brochures, but they have a desk to be behind. They have some printed collateral to use. It looks very nice. It's directly as the passengers exit out of the ship into the port itself. Another tool that we've certainly used and works very well for us is a specific printed cruise arrivals map or guide. On one side, as you can see here, it has a map of the area of the city. It's driven and sustained by advertising, so simple adverts will pay for its printing, and it's pretty much a cost-neutral exercise, as most things with VIX are. On the other side of it is some particular information that is desired by council and by the state around quarantine, wayfinding opportunities, that sort of thing. So lots of text. And we print around about 200,000 of these and ship them out the door in bucket loads on each of the cruise ship arrivals day. And this is the main tool that the volunteers use to help people with wayfinding, to show people where to go. So it's a really useful, interesting tool, and well worth having a look at if it doesn't exist already, which it may well. The other side of that, of course, is the industry, working with the industry. To get the welcome right, you've got to get the product right, and you've got to get the communications with the industry right. Excuse me. So one thing we had implemented before, and we'll do again, excuse me, is a cruise ship schedule. And this is as much for the industry to understand what ships are coming, where they're coming from, what day they're arriving, what days are weekends, what days are Sundays, for staffing, how many passengers, how many crew. This is quite a reasonably simple thing to pull together. But what's interesting for us is to understand what all of this means, and that takes certainly a bit more work. And what we do know, for example, is that if we have a ship arriving from Sydney, the wildlife tours will not sell as well as they would if the ship is arriving from New Zealand. So we've got a wildlife park called Bonaron here in close to Hobart. All Tasmanian animals, very popular on cruise ship days. But on days it's coming from Sydney, as you may have already guessed, the reason the passengers aren't particularly interested in it is because they've probably just been to Sydney Zoo. Whereas if they're coming from New Zealand, it's first Australian port. So the nuance about understanding which ship it is, but also where it's coming from or where it's going, it's just as important to understand what product you need to aim at that particular ship. And we'll get into different ships in a second. So product mix is absolutely critical here. Understanding that and getting loaded up onto the various systems, different specific products for different days is absolutely crucial. What we would do for our welcome is produce tour lists. So these tour lists were instigated by initially going out to industry to say, what have you got coming up for this month? So we've put out a schedule of cruise ships. We say, here are the opportunities, here are the ships. What tours are you offering specifically for those ships? And we'd make that into a very basic list here, which would be used by Visitor Information Centre staff, but also by the volunteers down at the cruise terminal. So when someone steps off at 8:30 in the morning and says, I really don't know what I want to do today, they've got an instant list saying, well, you know, at 9:15 you could take a Cadbury's coach tour. At 9:15 you could head up to Mount Wellington, Kunanyi. 9:30 you go whitewater rafting. There's many options, and they direct them to that. So, and these lists would be particularly useful all around the city for the various volunteers when they bumped into visitors to try to direct them. So that's about us trying to affect the economic yield. But it's also worth understanding that cruise ship passengers have had opportunities to be sold product all the way along their journey. So the moment they sign up for a cruise, they're going to be marketed at by the cruise lines, by the shore excursion companies to purchase and buy tours on the ship. Now, if they get to the port and haven't already bought a product through that, and they also haven't already decided to organise something themselves by booking direct with your product, you've got to manage expectations about what they're quite likely to do when they step off the ship, because they've had maybe 6 months of marketing at them about product up until that point. So it's unlikely when they step off the ship that they're really going to commit to something huge. And we see that our research shows us that it's that free independent traveller is really half day. Experience is probably the majority, the maximum they would want to do, but they would also want to have some sort of food and beverage offering and some sort of retail experience along the way. So it's that mix of half-day tour, food and beverage, and retail. If you can combine all those into one tour, then you're really hitting the right sort of mark. So we'll talk a little bit about cruise distribution. The cruise lines, and as we know, there aren't a huge amount of them, contract inbound tour operators or shore excursion operators to organise all of their tours for them. And there's only a few, really, as we said, Abercrombie and Kent, Bob Wood, Intercruises. So those relationships can be made pretty easily, but it is worth understanding that those companies themselves, the shore excursion companies, had just as hard a time as all of us during COVID, and their staff have been stripped back. And also they have to deal with and understand all products in all Australian ports as well as Asia. So us down here in little old Tassie, sending off an email to say, here's a new tour, it does this, it does that. It's really difficult to get cut through. One, if you don't have those existing relationships, or two, if you make it hard for the shore excursion companies. So one of the pieces of work we're currently doing at the moment is to pull together what we're calling a pitch pack to the shore excursion companies to really wrap up all the new experiences, because they've already got existing relationships with quite a few of our products, if they still exist, which the majority of them do. But the new products that are being offered, we're putting them together with itineraries in a very beautifully graphically designed, easily digestible pack to give to the shore excursion companies to say, here's Southern Tassie, or we're actually doing it as a state, here's Tasmania, here are your opportunities, here are the contacts, off you go. So it's trying to understand that they are in as much a difficult place and running at this as everybody is in the cruise industry. So to make it as easily digestible as possible. So this is teaching you to suck eggs here, I suppose, but they use them because it's probably the best and most effective way to do that. Now, to work with the shore excursion agents, there's a few considerations you need to think about. Making sure you've got the appropriate insurance and licensing. Need to be flexible due to factors outside the control of the cruise ship companies, weather conditions. And also that things can change at the last minute. One important point to raise here is that it's very difficult to combine your normal or your standard visitor market with the cruise ship market, because if your tour departs at 9 o'clock in the morning and you're combining the two markets together and the ship is delayed and doesn't arrive till 9 o'clock, then you've obviously got yourself a bit of an issue. So the majority of the success of the tours that have been offered through the shore excursion will be standalone cruise ship products offered to the cruise lines rather than combined with existing opportunities. there's a little explanation here that we pulled together for the bidding and booking process. It's a long burn. Some of these relationships do take quite a while to cement down. So, looking at them for this season can be tricky. But so it's an example of trying to look forward and looking maybe for the next year if you're building new product into the shore excursion companies. And there's also a conversation about commissions in there as well. So each ship is a slightly different market and demographic. And it's important to understand, the nuances between the various ships that you've got. And you talked earlier about expedition ships and larger ships, the difference between the two. There are obviously big differences in the type of shore excursion that those products are looking at, but scale of ship doesn't necessarily always reflect the type of products that are being sold. And there's some early research coming out through the Australian Cruise Associations, which indicates that the perception maybe on a larger cruise ship, which is a lower cost to get into, is that the person will purchase a product of lower value, but that's not actually playing out. Those that are spending less to stay on the ship are actually looking to spend more on the experiences in the destination. So the destination is still king in this equation. It's not back to the ship. And even inside the larger ships, you're going to have demographics of those that have spent an awful lot of money to be in a balconied cabin if you look at something like the Ovation of the Seas. There are some very expensive areas to stay on that, or there are some extremely budget areas. But so that even in one ship, there are many different types of products that you can offer that one ship. So it's important to understand when you're putting stuff to the shore excursion companies that there's a broad range of products that you can offer. I think we all understand what those shore excursion tours look like, so we'll move on with them. And we'll skip on that one as well, because we talked a little bit about that. So as we said, trends indicate that the consumer is leaning into the shore excursion market from around about 35% up to about 50%. And it's worth also noting that when we look at the type of products here, certainly in Tassie, that people purchase on the ground when they leave the ship, that decision about what they want to do is very much driven by the type of product that is offered on the ship. So we know that on the ship, the shore excursion companies tend to try to package products up so that they can't be bought directly on shore. So they'll package things up to make it a little bit more easy for the customer, but also so that it's not easy for the consumer on the cruise ship to purchase that directly from a company on board. But it does influence that decision. So if the shore excursion company, for example, is selling in our world a trip to Bonorong Wildlife Park combined with a visit to the Cascades Brewery, or maybe a trip up Kunali, Mount Wellington, combined with something else, those products will be front and centre in the passengers' minds because they've been marketed at about that product for the last however long since they bought that ticket. So it does influence. So understanding what products are being sold on the ship, and that's where the relationship with the insurance company really works, actually drives what the consumer wants to do when they get on land, because that's what they've heard about. So different cruise lines have different, obviously, target markets, different nationalities travel with different cruise lines. You need to keep evolving and be flexible and try to carve a niche. Glenn touched on this a little bit earlier at the beginning. The most important thing for us all to understand is that they're coming to your destination, so they want to experience your region's strengths. I mean, our region's strengths down here is our nature and wilderness offering, our food and produce, and our arts and culture. They're really the three main pillars of our brand that people are wanting to see in Tasmania. So we need to lean into them and really help deliver that to the passenger, because that's what they're coming there for. And they'll be coming for different reasons up to the top end, but it's about leaning in and offering them the brand experience that they're expecting when they come to that destination. One piece of work that does need to be done, and we're certainly not a shining example of this down in Tassie, is really helping the industry operators understand the distribution piece in here, because the perception is that the short excursion companies will charge a high commission, and they can be up to around about 30%, but it's just really understanding that cost and working with it. We view it as just a marketing cost, and it shouldn't be coming off your profit. So that's really a conversation about distribution, which we're leaning into ATEC at the moment to help our industry really understand that. And the reason we want to do that is because we want to broaden. We know that the short excursion companies are selling more product on the ship, so we need to help more industry operators understand how they can get their product onto that ship and still make it financially viable for them. We'll skip over that. Skip over the Australian Cruise Association. We touched on that. It's really, in the short time that we've got, and I'm running a little bit over here, but it's about building that relationship. I can supply this slide deck to Tourism Top End to share with you, and you can dig through that as we move forward. So it's worth noting here, for those products, that there are different ways to sell them, either through the short excursion companies or directly through your own websites. You need to make sure that your website content is tailored towards the cruise ship passengers, and that's really about search engine optimization. Ensure you communicate a level of confidence so that cruise passengers understand your experience, your safety protocols, that sort of thing. Use the various social media channels to that. So talking about product mix, so I have to kind of lean into our own experiences down here a bit, and you'll need to then translate them to your products up there. But when we think about some of our emerging themes and some emerging strengths and the things that we're working on down here, agritourism is something that's always been a part of Tassie's product offering, but we're leaning further into that over the last couple of years. We've done a lot of work in encouraging and working with more products to deliver an agritourism experience. And in that agritourism experience, we are talking about anything from vineyards to distilleries to the traditional sort of farm experience or farm tour or food. But how do we really link up that supply chain with the cruise line companies? And you can take an example here of something like a distillery. So we've got some amazing distillers down in Tassie, which have quite a large brand presence. And if we take something like Sullivan's Cove Distillery, which is technically the world's best single cask, single malt whiskey, twice. I try to get that into every presentation. How do we link the passenger to that experience in Tassie? And if you think about the ship, when building that relationship with the cruise lines, there's no reason why you can't approach the cruise lines to do some provisioning on board the ship. Have a Tasmanian, as you're coming towards Tasmania on the cruise, you can have an evening, a higher end experience, which the cruise line can sell themselves, of a Tassie whiskey experience on the ship. So you kind of seed that idea of Tasmanian whiskey, you attract the clients who want to do that, you sell a product on the ship, then you build a short excursion company. So when they get to Tassie, they get off, they head up the road, they go to Sullivan's Cove Distillery, they do the distillery tour, and then you've got the third option, which is retail, and that's provisioning retail into the ship. So what we're looking at the moment is to try to really link the destination all the way through the journey from the ship into the destination and then back into the ship with that retail opportunity. And we see that as being a good sort of brand leader, and also an economic return as well. And expedition ships are quite ripe for this sort of tailored high-end experience. So digging into different sort of ships. Now, this is work that we do very closely with Tasports down here, and with the Australian Cruise Association to kind of help the industry understand the different types of ships. And I've just pulled out 2 examples here. So this is a deck that we pull together for our industry operators to help them understand what sort of ships are coming and what sort of opportunities are there. And you can see, obviously, the Carnival Splendor is a slightly different demographic and different type of expectation than the Seabourn Odyssey. So there are 2 key different ships there, but also, as we said, the nuance in the tour list is to understand what's also happening with them, what part of the journey they're on, and how we can then tailor the product to them on each of their days. So one of the things I was asked to talk about is sort of accommodating the small independent tour sales and targeting that last minute visitor. And that last minute visitor is an interesting quandary, because, as we said, they've decided not to book something for the last 6 months. So when they do step off the vessel, it's, we've got to sort of tailor our expectations, as we said, but there is opportunity in there. What we do is a few different things. So we put in a hawker's permit area. So if we go back in history in Tassie around 10 years ago, and you may have the same problems up there, but we used to have anything from sort of taxi operators to tour bus operators hanging around the terminal, selling their wares, standing in front of the cruise terminal. My favourite one was we have an attraction here called Port Arthur Historic Site. And there was a guy who used to stand outside the cruise terminal with a large piece of paper that said Port Arthur, ARFUR, I think. And whenever anyone asked him to move along, he got very aggressive and started shouting. So really not the look that we wanted. We wanted to have a more professional and a more friendlier welcome. So as an organisation, we put together an area in conjunction with the council and Tasports where independent tour buses could operate. They set themselves up around about 100 metres away from the cruise terminal in a structured area, and Tasports help us set out bollards. They're basically parking spots normally. We put out bollards the night before, we section it off, and then in the morning we sell 8 different spots for the season, and those independent tour operators have the option of parking their bus there, and then they have a little table that they can set up with a rain shelter if needed, and then as the free independent travellers come off, they come past this area, and they have the opportunity to use this group to tailor what they want to do. So most of the operators down there won't have set departure times or set schedules. They'll just be selling group tours. So the first group comes up and there's 6 of them. They say they want to do this, this, and this. That will set the tone of that tour, and then they can add on a few more. And it's been particularly successful with those independent tour operators. It helps us because it gives us an opportunity to keep them all in one place, but also give them the opportunity to access those free independent travellers. But the interesting development, I suppose, in that place, and we're in discussions with Carnival Cruise Lines on this at the moment, is that the cruise terminal we have in Hobart has always been an area which has been rented by the cruise lines themselves. So the only thing you could do in there is offer a welcome, information, wayfinding, that sort of thing, rather than direct sales. Now, that conversation is a bit up for grabs at the moment because the cruise lines have a job to do to make sure that they are working closer with the destination. So this comes into the state's piece of work that we all work on, is trying to make the cruise line sector work for us as a state so that we get out of it what we want rather than being dictated to directly by the cruise line. So there's possibility, and we'll chase this down and see if we can get it happening, to actually sell directly to cruise ship passengers inside the cruise terminal, as long as it's done in a quality manner, and as long as it's done in conjunction with the shore excursion companies, so that we're not cutting their product up. We're offering different things, selling to the passengers inside the cruise terminal. We do exactly what you're doing now. We do a lot of industry development, pre-season briefings for the industry. We sell advertising inside the cruise terminal for product, and then we work hand in glove with the Visitor Information Centre in Hobart. So that's kind of that massive, big old lot of words all in one fell swoop. Is me. Have we got any questions?
Alex, that's fantastic, and I don't use this word lightly. It's a privilege to hear from you this morning and get some insights as to not what you've been doing for some time, but that work in progress that Southern Tasmania and Hobart are doing. So we really appreciate that. While people gather their thoughts, if anyone here has a question, we do have a microphone that Bryony here has. If I ask you to introduce yourself and your company. Alex can't see you, but he'd love to hear you. If anyone's got any questions, I think everyone's been given all the answers they need, Alex. We don't have any questions, and if we do, we'll be sure to send those through. Alex, for me, there was a couple of really terrific takeaways there. One was the concept of social licenses. Cruise ships are coming back, making sure that the locals are along for the journey, not just the tourism visitor economy, retail, touring, hospitality, who are desperate for these customers. That number around people pre-purchasing their cruises is getting up to around 50%. I think that was a key takeaway for us to think about, and how we think about how we structure our businesses to those on board the ship, understanding that they've got a 4 o'clock departure and that ship goes. So if something does delay, how can we make some adjustments in our tour or our activities to ensure they get back on time? The value of the welcome, that's a really key piece, Alex, for us here, is to make sure that it is not just an Aussie welcome, but it's a distinctly Darwin top-end welcome that they receive. And I also enjoyed your comments there about that don't just take it for granted that the expensive ships are where all the money is and the cheap ones aren't. That we all know those people who travel around and go less on the accommodation and go big on the feed, big on the experiences. And I think that was a key part. Tailor making your tour and your product. So I think a number of people with us today here in the room would be thinking about their businesses. They go, I offer this and that's what I offer. But for those days, and we know what those days of cruise ships are, there's an opportunity to make some adjustments and to be able to sell specifically into those passengers arriving, because we know that they've got to be out of here by 5 o'clock in the afternoon, typically. And I really, wow, you got that plug in pretty well for the distillery. So we're onto that, but I think also, I really like that concept of linking the destination prior to them getting here and really getting them geared up and inspired to get off that ship and have a great time in Hobart. And gee, we'd love to, I think I can see the ideas already ticking around the room as how we could do and what we could do better there. And I think the key to is working with Tourism NT and Darwin Port on that. Last opportunity for questions. Anybody? Alex? Thank you very much for your time. You've got an enormous amount of work that you do down there, and you do it so well. You've got such a great reputation. You might have heard earlier, I had you got rid of Steve Farquhar. He's up here for 2 days. He sends his regards, and I got to say, he said if you're talking to one guy in Australia who knows cruise and has got his industry working and on site and ready for it, it's this gentleman we've been able to spend some time with this morning, Alex. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you very much, Glenn. And if you can still hear me, I'd like to thank you so much for the opportunity. Can you still hear me?
Yes, mate.
Oh, sorry. I would like to thank you so much for the opportunity. And I think what has made us successful in Tassie in general is collaboration. And I think you're of a similar scale up there. I mean, the reality here is And we go back to 2015 when we took out, I'm just rubbing salt in everyone's wounds there, 11 of the National Tourism Awards out of 21. And we put on a little event after that we got 6 of the National Tourism Award winners in a room to talk to the rest of the industry. And Rob Pennicott even put up a page of his submission at the time, and which was a bit unheard of. And we got to the end of the line, and there was a lady representing the Falls Festival from Sydney, and she said, I can tell you why you're winning so many awards. It's because this event wouldn't happen anywhere else, because people compete too hard. And the reason we collaborate so well here is because if I compete too hard against my competitor, I'm going to get to the IGA at the end of the day, and they're going to be in the queue in front of me because we're such a small community. If I go hard against another competitor, I'm going to be standing in the school pickup line, and that person is going to be there as well. So we're kind of in a way forced to collaborate, but it's become our absolute strength. And we couldn't do this if we didn't do it in partnership with the local council, the port, the state. But there are tensions in cruise. Cruise is a love it or hate it sort of situation. But for us, it's about that opportunity and about that welcome for the visitor. So thank you for the opportunity, and I wish you every success for the coming season.
Ladies and gentlemen, Alex Heroys. Good on you, mate. So now we're going to bring it much more local, and I hope you found that as informative as I did. She gave some really good insights, and for some of you, you might be really much closer to the journey, and you have quite a bit of experience working with crews. For some of you, haven't played with this kind of customer for quite some time, if ever. So Alex talked a lot there about the pre-arrival and the destination. We're going to now bring that spotlight into people getting off the ship, looking for something to do, and to share with you some of the initiatives that are uncannily similar to what we've been thinking, to what I've just seen for the first time from Alex today. I will put that genuine disclaimer out there, but similar, but with more of a Darwin and the top end taste to it. And we're working closely with our partners again, with City of Darwin, with Activate Darwin and Tourism NT. And now with this, I'd like to invite Sarah Purcell to come and speak to you. Sarah, and I'm sure everyone in the room knows Sarah. If you don't, please introduce yourself. She's the manager of our wonderful Darwin Visitor Information Centre and the team. And then Tracy Heffernan is going to speak. And Tracy is Sarah's 2IC. She's the Customer Services Assistant Manager. Funnily enough, Tracy came to us from Hobart, where for the last 4 years, she was the manager of that Tasmanian Tasmanian Travel and Visitor Information Centre. So I'm going to hand it over to Sarah. She's going to run through, and then Tracy on what initiatives the guys have got planned for this cruise season and the opportunities there are. And we're really keen to hear some more ideas if you've got some. Hand over to Sarah.
Good morning. Thank you for coming along today. As Glenn mentioned, I'm Sarah Purcell. I'm the Centre Manager at Tourism Top End, and Tracy is our Assistant Manager in Customer Services. And between us, Tracy and I have several years of experience on the ground on cruise ship days between Darwin and Hobart. And we're very excited to be discussing all things cruise today with you. So a little bit about Tourism Top End and who we are. Tourism Top End is a not-for-profit membership-based association, and we operate the nationally accredited Visitor Information Centre here in Darwin. Tourism Top End is located at 6 Bennett Street, operating in the iconic heritage-listed Old Reserve Bank, which is perfectly situated between the vibrant city centre and the bustling waterfront precinct, making us easy to find and convenient for passengers and visitors on foot, and with a dedicated cruise shuttle bus shade structure just out in front of our main entrance. We are open 7 days of the week, and we employ over 10 remarkable travel and information consultants who are dedicated and passionate in delivering excellence in informational services, itinerary planning, processing bookings, and assisting customers with their inquiries. Our role in cruise tourism for the Northern Territory is to add value to the visitor experience and promote Darwin and the Top End as an amazing destination. On cruise ship days, we inspired to give passengers a warm welcome to Darwin in the MT. Our staff are some of the first Territorian encounters passengers have once they disembark the ship, and our friendly and knowledgeable consultants and ambassadors are ready to greet and assist with any of their inquiries. We adjust our opening hours for cruise ship days in consideration of the ship's arrival time, and with the cooperation of our members and some preparation, we know exactly what tours and attractions are available to offer on the day. We qualify the passengers and recommend experiences to suit their needs and ambitions. We also give out the best directions to the local toilets and other local advice. So we welcome everyone to join us for this 2022 cruise ship season. Cruise ship days are such a buzz, and we work incredibly hard to promote our region, our members, and everyone involved in the cruise industry. So with that, I'd like to go through some incentives Tourism Top End are offering for cruise. Tourism Top End have designed a dedicated landing page on our website for cruise. The purpose of the cruise landing page is to put Darwin Information Centre in the minds of cruise ship passengers, make them feel like they're having a personalised experience on our website. It gives visitors that don't already have shore excursions planned the comfort in knowing they can visit us directly for bookings upon arrival, or explore our website to be inspired to stay a little longer, or organise their excursions online. The page is also an information hub with up-to-date information on how to get around town, things to do, retail, food and events. Another great incentive Tourism Top End will be offering is activation of the centre, working closely with Council and the City of Darwin to implement this. This is to enhance the visitor experience and create excitement as passengers disembark from the shuttle bus or are walking up to the city from the cruise terminal. The outside grass area at the entrance of the visitor centre can be activated with member stalls and promotional materials. In the past, we've had an airboat on display, a member offering local jam samples, and it has also been a baby crocodile to hold, making for a great photo. We look forward to improving and making this better this season. This is a great opportunity to promote your business as the passengers are arriving to the visitor centre. It creates a first great impression of Darwin in the Top End, and it really vitalises the CBD. An EOI will be sent out to all our members who would like to be involved with further details on this. Flyer for tours available on the day. On cruise ship days, we will have flyers available to hand out in the centre. This is for all members' tours that are available to book on the day. The flyer will provide passengers with the information to plan and book with us at the counter. It is visually pleasing, clearly highlights what's available to book for the day. A welcome message with the cruise ship name will be a nice acknowledgement to the passengers, an incentive to get out to our regions and around our beautiful city. I'd like to introduce you to our Top End passport that we're very excited about. The Top End Cruise Passport is an A6 booklet that can be redeemed through the Visitor Centre for cruise passengers. The booklet will list a range of information inside consisting of general information, business listings, offers and advertisements. The booklet focuses on activating the Darwin and the Top End by showcasing a business's product or offering directly to the cruise target market. Its convenient pocket size makes an attractive handout for space-poor passengers, and it's a great novelty keepsake to take home. So, how can you get your product cruise ready? Firstly, familiarise yourself with the cruise ship schedule. The cruise schedule includes the dates and times of arrival and departure, the ship name and passengers capacity. This can also be found on the Tourism Top End Cruise page on our website under Cruise Schedule and is available to print. We really encourage to share and communicate the schedule with your staff and have it displayed somewhere in the office or your shop front. This is really handy and can help you in rostering staff for the day, altering your business hours and other preparations. Secondly, understand your market, destination and prepare. As Alex has mentioned, do a little research on the type of cruise line coming into port and make an effort within your business and products to personalise it for the passengers. In the past, there has been market stall holders at the Darwin Cruise Terminal, which won't be happening. So this is a great opportunity for local retailers in our CBD and waterfront district to showcase their shop fronts, businesses and products. Think about how you can represent our destination. Think uniquely Darwin and Top End. What are we known for and what are we really good at? Crocodiles, barramundi, mud crab, cultural experiences and art. These are just some examples of what international passengers have asked us in the past. Some examples of showcasing and activating your own business is welcome signage, displays of special offers and add-ons, mentioning any free services such as Wi-Fi, and make your signage and displays interesting and personal. Make it territorial, put some humour into it and some storytelling behind it. Importantly, keep your product up to date. BookEasy is the reservations management system tourism top use for all of our bookings. For bookable product, keeping BookEasy up to date is key. This is how our consultants book your product. It's what they use to check availability, so please keep it up to date. Some key points here are availability, pricing, product descriptions, and your policies. A great option for cruise, particularly for our tour operators, is to create and load new product in BookEasy for the day. The product name could be something like Cruise Day Litchfield Day Tour. This will jump out to our consultants, and this way we can adjust pickup times and locations for that day in consideration to the ship's departure times. But please, if you do make a new product in BookEasy, inform us via email. We want to know of this great offer. BookEasy how-to guides will be available to members via our cruise toolkit that Tracy will go into a little later. Lastly, product pitches. We encourage our members to book a product pitch with our consultants. Product pitches are a great way for our consultants to understand your product and have the tools to convert inquiries into sales for your business. Let us know why people love your product and what makes you stand out. Discuss any updated information about your product, offerings, and points of difference. Durations of product pitches are 15 minutes and commence at 8:45 a.m. on the weekdays, with members coming into the visitor centre or via Zoom. Members can book product pitches via our website, and again, more details available in the Tourism Top 10 Cruise Toolkit. So that's it from me. Thank you for your time, and I'm just going to hand you over to Tracy now.
Thank you, Sarah. I'd just like to touch on the Visitor Centre's current marketing initiatives for cruising in 2022. So as Sarah mentioned, we're very proud and pleased with our Top-In Passport that we've created as a concept for members to be distributed to cruise ship passengers for operators who are targeting the cruise ship market. It's designed to maximise the return of your investment and of course to increase revenue. The passport will be handed out to cruise ship passengers to use as an informational tool and to receive great deals whilst they're in port. We can also offer attractive digital content on the screens in our centre. These can display 1-minute videos promoting your products and or a special deal for cruise ship days. We also will have a specials board, which is a sandwich A-frame board outside the centre in the contemporary space on the front lawns, and this can display your cruise day specials as well. Our ongoing and additional marketing opportunities. So the Visitor Centre front doors at the moment are displayed with the Darwin Festival artwork, which looks beautiful. It can showcase and market your brand. Our highly visible entrance at the moment has frequent traffic in and out, nearly up to 500 people a day. So this can perfectly illustrate your artwork advertising your product. Our maps. So our map advertising, you can advertise your product on the top-end regional maps, which are distributed throughout the centre. Our travel consultants use these maps on a daily basis to guide our visitors around the areas, and then they take the maps actually with them home or to their hotel where they can peruse the information at their convenience. Our top-end holiday guide, you can advertise your product in the 2023 edition, which is distributed for a 12-month period all over Australia and is highly recommended. Now I'd like to talk about the Darwin Visitor Centre Ambassador Program. I'd like to begin with a testimonial from one of our volunteers who was a meet and greet volunteer in 2019. He said, "I find it personally rewarding and I get a lot of personal benefits from it, especially in the mental health field, and also receiving the thank yous, the smiles, and being able to sell our wonderful experiences to our visitors." So the program will be coordinated by myself with help and oversight from Sarah, and will involve volunteer inductions, training, meetings. We will also coordinate electronic communications, such as a monthly newsletter. and this will aim to increase product knowledge and provide a regular touch point with all volunteers. Our volunteers historically have been very friendly and helpful, sharing top-end local secrets and augmenting the visitor experience with suggestions and potential inclusions that will deepen our visitor experience. Our ambassadors will also support the growth of the centre by directing cruise ship visitors to use our booking service. To make sure our volleys stand out, we provide colourful tropical uniforms with their name badges on our logo when they meet and greet the cruise ship passengers. Our team of ambassadors are historically made up of international students and retirees, both of whom benefit from the opportunity to interact with each other and locals and visitors. In addition to our core volunteer group, Tourism Top End actively engage with schools and the Charles Darwin University tourism students, with a number of teachers opting to gain an understanding of the volunteer program in order to give students real-world opportunities with visitors during the cruise ship season. Our goal is to contribute to return visitation and word of mouth advocacy through an exceptional overall visitor experience. So how do you get involved? As Sarah mentioned, we have the Top End Tourism Top End Cruising Toolkit. So this has all your how-to guides in it, current and ongoing marketing opportunities, the cruise ship schedule and content, contact details, and links to product pictures, and some tips and some tricks. Communication. Our email address at info@tourismtopend.com.au is what we would love to hear from you regarding anything that you would like to advise us of, and keep us informed and up to date, whether it's about your opening hours, changing for cruise ship days, booking in a product pitch, photos of your experiences that we can share in our newsletter, or an exciting new product release. We'd love to hear from you. So please drop in for a chat, give us a call, or email the information, email address for Tourism Top End. Thank you very much.
Tracy, Sarah, thank you. Erudite, to the point, all the information about what's happening locally. Thank you very much. The guys have really been putting a lot of work into coming up with some really valuable, simple solutions that we're still working through the cost on some of them. We don't want to make money out of this. This is about being able to create a really good pieces of collateral and information, and then you sort of starts with the website and the online information there. And when we talk about the Top End cruise passport, it started out with something that was really simple, put in your pocket, almost like a passport shape. Let's just call it a passport. That's what we can do. And really that's a bit of a souvenir piece, but the other opportunity is to be able to present your business, and you might want to think about value adds or special offers, or spend $200, get X, or you know what, come in, buy a meal, get a free beer. There's some opportunities there, not to be discounting your product, but to be value adding and really encouraging to increase people's spend in your business. So I think ultimately that's what we're talking about here. There's a couple of parts. We get this ambassador army together, and I'm just so thrilled to hear the work that Tracy and Sarah and the team are doing around our ambassador army, and you'll see that start, and that'll get a bit of public through the media campaign attention in the coming weeks as well. It's about the experience, but it's absolutely about the economic benefit. Like I touched on, and I think we heard a little bit through Alex, it's not just about having 3,500 people trudge around the city doing nothing, soaking up the Wi-Fi. It's about their spend and how we can keep our businesses operating really well, keeping our staff employed, and having a great time. And going away with a distinctively Darwin Top End experience. That's the key to all this. So, does anyone have any questions? Yes.
The Darwin Ambassador Program, and in terms of the recruitment process, etc.
Yep.
How will that be? I'm familiar with it in Melbourne as well, and I'm sort of familiar with it from more of a seniors volunteering point of view. But in terms of, I guess, the work, the workforce that we have, and how interconnected and collaborative the whole of the Top End is in getting people on tour. For example, if I have staff that are from 25 to 45, would you be encouraging staff from certain operators to also be volunteers, or is this a little bit more removed from the staff that already work with operators, if that makes sense?
Well, I think we'd welcome anyone.
Yeah.
Anyone with a passion for tourism, a passion for people, and welcoming them and imparting their experience to help get that as a great experience. Tracy mentioned we've got Christine here from CDU. We're working with how we get the students involved as well, so they can get that real life experience of dealing with customers rather than just coming out of the classroom. Customer service part of their program. So I think we're not wedded to the fact that you've got to be retirees and have a seniors card. That's just the obvious go-to because of people who are looking, have got some time in their hand, but we welcome anyone. I think there's a lot of value in our ambassador army. Maybe we can come up with a better name. What I would say to that is, regardless of their age, and if they are staff who just want to give time, and amongst us we've got people who volunteer their time for so many great causes around. This is a really happy place, welcoming tourists to our great city. And I think the key to that is, and I think we heard a bit of this in Alex's presentation, which I really enjoyed, is the familial opportunities as well. It's all well and good to have really friendly people of whatever age, welcoming, saying good day, but if someone says, look, I'm looking for a great place can you give me a couple of options for lunch? I'm looking to buy some art. I'm looking to get some souvenirs. I need to get my dentures fixed. To have an understanding of where those businesses are, we can't just take it for granted that everybody automatically knows this. So having a familiarisation program, I think, is key, built into this. And for those businesses that, yes, if you've got a spare seat, and sometimes familials work really well if the husband or the wife is volunteering, but you might make that seat available for their partner so they can get to enjoy that with somebody else, then they'll really see that through the eyes of somebody else as well. So they're the kind of opportunities, certainly attractions as well. Having an opportunity, we would certainly be setting up a process for this, that it's not them banging on the door saying, g'day, I'm part of the ambassador army, please let me in, or let me on, or let me eat. It would be a process where it would be coming through Tracy's team. And there would be that sort of official recognition. But ambassadors play a really key role, and we saw their passion. And the other thing that Alex picked up on, which is interesting, it's not just the top end, or it's across Australia, I would assume, that volunteers come to it with their passion and their enthusiasm, and as part of that, sometimes their biases towards, I reckon you go here or go there. And that's the kind of thing that people are giving of their time. We've just got to take that good and the bad, but do our best as an industry to excite them and inspire them to talk about everything they can that's great of our destination. Any other questions? Nerida.
Where will the ambassadors be situated?
Yeah, great question. We're still working on that. So we had a meeting. The question was, where, for everyone online, where will our ambassadors be situated? So with the news from Carleen today that the Border Force are not occupying it as an immigration hall down at the port, so I think we need to have a bit of a review and have a chat. So that's first news, so we'll find that out. We had a meeting with the company that had previously been doing the shuttle cruise operations from the port terminal up to the cruise ship shuttle bus terminal at the front there in Bennett Street, about how can we get, and is it opportunist, is it good to have ambassadors on there doing a welcome, that we can have some input into the script, pointing out key places. And you might not want to get a bus back down in the afternoon. You might want to just meander your way from the mall, from anywhere in the CBD back down to waterfront for a nice cold glass or something, watching the boat ready for your 4 o'clock departure. So terminal, on the boat, and definitely around the centre. Further afield through the mall and what have you, we've talked about it, but we haven't thought about it in much more detail. I think part of that also depends upon the demand of how many ambassadors we can get. So the first priority will be to helping people at the centre and at the port. If we can get some people on the buses doing a really cool welcome to Darwin chat on that ride up the hill, because remember, it is during the build-up and the wet. So in the morning, people are much more in my experience with all the cruise ships through 2019 was in 2018, is they They, in the morning, want to get out and get up because they want to touchstone the centre of the city. I want to get to the CBD, right, yeah, I've done that, now I've organised my stuff, I've got to be back on board by 4 o'clock, what can I do? So some of them will choose to do their own, get to the attraction, some of them will want to choose transport that drops them off all around the city and picks them up. Others will want to get out to the jumping crocs and come back or do something similar to it. But they've got to be back by 4 o'clock. And one of the challenges about what we're talking about on ground experiences for people who haven't bought on the boat is the ship doesn't wait if you didn't book through the boat. If your business has customers that were booked on board and you get a flat tyre, you radio into the ship and say, I'm going to be 30 minutes late, they'll hold the ship for 30 minutes. But if that customer booked on a tour that didn't go through the ship, that boat doesn't wait. See you in Broome, see you in Cairns, see you in Singapore. And then we've had that happen in the past, right? So Rita, it's a great question. I think definitely the port, subject to availability, definitely the centre. If we can get them on the shuttle buses, awesome. If there are a couple of key points throughout the mall and we could do a pop-up on the day and work with City of Darwin and activate Darwin around that, even better. Any other questions? Right. I would like to thank Michelle Carter for putting today together. Shannon Board, thank you very much for putting today together. And if, I really, the amount of work and passion that you guys have brought to this and putting it together, thank you to Sarah, thank you to Tracy, thank you to our producer of today's show, Bryony Childs, back recently married, now Bryony McGill, but we're not sure whether it's Childs or McGill. We're still going through that awkward stage of who are you really? Thanks to the good folk here at Novotel CBD. Thank you very much. And thank you all for coming. For those of you here in the room here today, it's terrific to have you here. For those of you who joined us online, thank you very much. Thanks to everyone. And keep an eye out for these newsletters. There'll be links to this toolkit, which the guys are doing some great work on. Gemma's in the room. Gemma's down the back here. Gemma put together that website page, which is just awesome. I'm so... I was blown away when I had a quick look around our website, having just come back from a couple of days off and seeing the way that the work you've done on that. Thank you, Gemma. That's awesome. On a quick note, we also have, this is all part of our tourism enhancement program that we operate throughout the year for our members, or TEP as we know it. Tonight this afternoon we have a very special TEP, what we call a spotlight series. So we had one recently with Brent Anderson, who's the General Manager, Regional Director, I should say, for Southeast Asia for Tourism Australia. At 4 o'clock this afternoon, live from London, will be Sally Cope. Sally is the Regional Director for United Kingdom for Tourism Australia. Sally's going to give us a bit of an update of what life is like in the UK, what's happening in the outbound travel markets from the UK to Australia, and also to be delivering that in a distinctively top-end sense. Where are the opportunities? What travel agents are still standing? What are doing well? And what other markets, destinations, are marketing heavily in the UK? Who are our competitors and what they're doing on a global stage? So 4 o'clock this afternoon, if you've got some time, please pop online. And I've heard Sally speak before, most recently earlier this year in Melbourne at the Destination Australia conference. And the insight she's got for what is traditionally one of our biggest source markets internationally, the UK market. Spend some time and have a listen to Sally. I'm sure you'll find it very insightful. I always do every time I hear from Sally. So thank you, everyone. Thanks for taking the time, and we'll see you at our next little event. Thank you.
Make sure you help.